Andy, thanks for joining the show today, as always.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
When we're looking at Square, this is a company, as I said, it's really changed the way these vendors are doing businesses. I see it all over the place, whether it's a coffee shop or a restaurant grabbing dinner. What is your social data showing?
Social data for Square is extremely hot. It's one of the fastest growing companies in our entire database of 300 plus consumer-facing companies, with a purchase intent growth of over 100% year over year. And so when we talk about purchase intent for Square, this is people talking about installing Square payment processing systems or installing the Cash app on their phone. In other words, they're initiating a business relationship with Square, and that is up over 100% year over year. It's one of those kind of growth curves that you see from entrepreneurs and startups when they pitch their company in terms of their projections for how well they're going to do, and Square is actually delivering on that. It's incredible to see.
Yeah, I think two things. You talked about the Cash app that is so vital, but this company has something that is a new way. It's called gross payment volume, right? And that's how the money that they bring in and how often and the numbers. And this company seems to be killing it in terms of gross payment volume. That's just one of all the positive things. You know, this is, as you know, Jack Dorsey's other company. So tell me, I need more information, Andy. Give me everything you got, frankly.
That's good, because I got more information. I think the one note of caution I'll put out there on Square, when we look at consumer happiness mentions, and that's, how thrilled people are with the company, and that line right there is the ratio between people that are talking positively about Square and people that are talking negatively about that. That happiness level has dropped pretty consistently over time. It's something that we tend to see when companies grow this fast, because early adopters are just much more forgiving. So that's something to keep an eye on. It's not something that I'm terribly concerned about now. But one of the other things I think that's really cool that Square is doing is they're actually putting out a debit card. Venmo did this recently for all users. You could apply to get it, but what Square is doing it a little differently, and using a debit card only for sellers. And so people who are selling at their shop can get a debit card to transact with. In other words, they're replacing the bank. So sellers take in money from their clients, and then now they have this Square debit card that they can take to any store or buy their inventory online and continue the business cycle without ever having to go to a traditional bank, which is a real leap forward, I think, and Square is way ahead of the game in terms of enabling small businesses to do big things really easily.
And it certainly shows, Andy. I want to pull Jenny into the conversation here as well. Jenny, Square has been on a roller coaster in terms of stock price. Are you seeing anything on social media that's kind of reflecting that?
Absolutely. And one thing I want to shed light on was the gross payment volume, which the last quarter was 28%, but they expect the big number that is actually really cool is this quarter they expect it to be 57%. So nearly
doubling, right?
Yeah, so they are growing fast. And honestly, you see that reflected on social media, because this is a company we frequently talk about on cash tags, and the noise today is so much greater than the noise it was 6 months ago and 6 months before that. It's remarkable. So really, people are crazy about Square. People love the ease of not going to banks, which Andy just mentioned. Banks are kind of this negative event, it seems like, on social media, and Square has completely taken that out of the equation, which is pretty cool.
Think about it. If I got this right, if what Andy's saying, if I understand what he's saying, he's basically saying you can, the money that goes into your account, right, via a Square, via you selling a product, you can immediately go spend. Right, you've got the card on the other side, and it's storing the money right there. You can immediately go replenish your supply, do whatever you need to do. That's amazing.
It is, and the days of checks and cash seem to be very far behind us, which is really cool. And
Andy, did I get that right?
Yeah, you got it exactly right. There's no 3 days for the money to get into your bank account and then spending it from your bank account. It's in your Square balance, and you can go spend it using a debit card in your possession right away, which is, it is phenomenal. It's a game changer for small businesses that a lot of times, have trouble with cash flow because of some of those delayed deposits into their bank and some of the obstacles that traditional banking deals to them.
One thing I wanted to just point out real quick too, Apple just reported earnings yesterday. They were reporting the highest iPad sales that they'd had in years. I wonder if that's tied to Square at all, but what remains to be seen. Jenny, what are you seeing on Twitter regarding Square in particular?
Yes, so our first tweet is from Dennis Cow, who says, Square has been trading in its low 70s range for the past million years, while all its tech peers are breaking through to all-time highs. Bought like 10K of the 72 May 17 calls to see if anything happens. I don't know. So specifically regarding Square's movement, what are we seeing going into post-market earnings today?
I mean, the chart for something that is so volatile is really unbelievably range bound. And it's sitting right in the middle of its high, which is 101, and kind of its lows in the, in that late December sell-off that got it almost down to 50. It's right in the middle, right? And its way back. So I just think this stock has a chance for a massive move.
Andy, I'd like to get your take on that, because if I'm following it right, you were saying purchase intent is up over 100% year over year. That's a positive sign. Well, the stock price over the last trailing 12 months is only up 50%. It's well off its highs, over 25% off its highs. But looking at what they're expecting on EPS and revenue, that's 33% year over year growth and 56% year over year growth. To me, based off your data, that seems like it may be a little low.
Well, they're comparing different things. I think we're talking about actual installations of the products, which does not correlate directly to the amount of transactions that occur, because a lot of new installations of the product are smaller transaction sizes than their average, and those companies need room to grow. I will say, on the volatility of the stock and the lack of it in the last little bit, that range-bound action, when you look at that chart of the last year of Square stock price, it looks really reasonable when you think of it from the perspective of Square is essentially a binary bet. Are you willing to say Square is going to change the face of small business banking and consumer purchases or not? This could be, if they fail, this could be a $15 stock in 3 years. If they succeed, this could be a $400 stock in 3 years. And so I think that's what you're seeing in Wall Street is, a lot like Roku and some of these other, high growth tech names that are trying to disrupt very old industries. Essentially it's a binary bet, and it seems like the street action is reflecting that.
And I think that's a really good point. We're going to get a little bit more clarity after the bell today when they do report. Jenny, are you seeing anything on Twitter regarding today's earnings announcement?
I am. So our next tweet is from Nico Enya, who says, Square reporting after the bell could be a massive beat based on analyst recommendations. Plus you have Jesus Christ himself running the company. Good story. Growth company trading at 9 times prices to sales seems pretty cheap. Probably going to buy some calls. So I love the fact that Jack Dorsey is referred to as Jesus Christ. But Andy, my question is, Jack Dorsey is affiliated so much with these growth companies like Twitter, like Square. When does Square become a value company?
Yeah, it's a long way from that. I think they're expected to announce earnings of 8 cents per share on a stock that's in the $70. So it's a really long way from value. I think, essentially what you're looking at from the company, all of the numbers that we've talked about today in terms of revenue, in terms of transaction volume, all those things are going to matter. But what's going to matter more is how Jack Dorsey presents his vision of the future. And he's very good at that. He's less of an Elon Musk type and more of a Steve Jobs type in terms of providing a real roadmap that can actually be achieved. And he has built the trust of Wall Street that'll be able to achieve that. And so I think it's really going to come down to that guidance and the vision for the company. We'll have to see what earnings do. I think there's a big implied move possible on this. And so anybody trading it needs to be careful. From the LikeFolio data side, from a consumer insight side, we can say with certainty that Square's penetration of the small business market is growing and is growing quite phenomenally.